Is Moody's telling us something that other lawmakers ought to be listening to, Congressman? What are we learning about the fiscal health of our nation?
Well, it's precarious in this particular bill. They call it the big, beautiful bill. I think it's a large, lousy law, would basically put trillions of dollars on America's credit card, basically piling up debt for future generations. And I think that Moody's recognizes that and is sending a signal to them not to pass this bill.
And yet they are going to continue to try over the weekend, Congressman. Obviously, there's many questions about this timeline, knowing as well that embedded in this bill is a lift to the debt ceiling. And it's the debt ceiling that has in part caused the downgraded ratings we've already seen from the other credit agencies. Fitch and S&P already have warned about this. Do you think that there may be a possibility Democrats, in the name of the full faith and credit of the United States, are going to have to step in at some point to work with Republicans to make sure the debt ceiling gets raised in a timely manner?
Possibly, but only if the Republicans don't shred the social safety net in the name of funding tax cuts for the wealthiest among us. Remember, this same bill basically takes Medicaid away from upwards of 10 million Americans, their sole source of health care, and basically leaves them more destitute, sicker, and unable to work, making them more reliant on the social safety net. I'm a product myself of public housing and food stamps, and I would not be here but for the fact that the government stepped in the breach when my parents fell down economically. And yet we're here talking about doing the same to millions of other people. Democrats are not going to stand for that. They're not going to support that type of approach to our budget the way that the Republicans are right now.
Well, Congressman, considering the fact that Democrats do not have a seat at the table for this debate in the reconciliation process by design, are you quietly hoping the Freedom Caucus derails this whole thing?
I think whether I do or not, I think that's what they're doing right now. And you see the infighting. I think particularly it's because constituents are kind of raising the alarm. Democrats are kind of shining a light on the harm that's being done by these proposed cuts. I'm getting calls constantly, Joe, from people who are basically fearful that not only is Medicaid going to be cut, but their Social Security and Medicare are also going to be affected. And so I got to believe that lawmakers on the other side are getting the same types of calls. And so they're left with a choice. Do they choose their constituents or do they choose Donald Trump? And if they choose the latter, they're going to be held accountable.
Well, Congressman, you, of course, right now are in the middle of an active run for a Senate seat being vacated by Dick Durbin. And I do wonder what you expect from the United States Senate, the chamber you hope to join here, as there are senators who have made similar suggestions to you, even on the Republican side, about concerns over Medicaid, over the kind of spending cuts we are looking at here. Are you counting on the Senate to send the House back a very different bill, assuming, of course, that the House can pass one in the first place?
I think they will. I think that they're not going to, based on what I've heard, it's very possible that they're not going to go along with these types of cuts. And I think at the end of the day, basically, Donald Trump is trying to fund these tax cuts on the back of working families and the poor. And that's just something that doesn't go over well. And not only is Moody's, by the way, this is the first time that all three ratings agencies have downgraded America's debt at the same time. But not only is this bill horrible from a fiscal standpoint, but it's morally wrong. And I think that's something that a lot of people is weighing on a lot of people as well.
When you hear about a budget committee hearing at 10 p.m. on a Sunday, Congressman, does that tell you that the chairman thinks he has the votes or not?
It signals to me that perhaps he's hoping that some members don't show up. I think that it's a desperate attempt to try to rescue that particular bill. But regardless of what happens on Sunday night, I guarantee you that constituents are going to be paying attention, not only Sunday night, but the next week as well.
Of course, this weekend in Washington is going to be a very busy one for that reason. And that's what President Trump is returning to as he makes his journey back to Washington from his trip in the Middle East. I do want to ask you, given you're the ranking member on the China Select Committee in the House, about the deals President Trump struck while there, specifically the moves the U.S. is making when it comes to chips and technology that Saudi Arabia and the UAE are going to have access to. Are you worried about the end market for those ultimately ending up being China, not these countries?
Yes, I think it's a horrible deal. I think that, first of all, rescission of or ending of the what's called the AI diffusion rule. Essentially, basically, this rule prevents us from selling to individuals or entities in countries that might end up sharing that technology with the Chinese Communist Party. And that's what's going to happen here. Okay, let's be very clear. If we allow American chip companies to sell the highest end semiconductors to companies like G42 in the United Arab Emirates, that technology is going to end up in the hands of the Chinese government, and it's going to be used against us. It's going to be used in their military systems, and it's going to be used to perpetrate human rights abuses, such as in the Uyghur genocide.
Something tells me that the China Select Committee, however, will not be holding a hearing on that, Congressman. Is it something, as ranking member, that you'll push for?
I'm going to be pushing to shine a light on this as much as I possibly can, because it's one of those issues where I think that these export controls really have made a difference, a critical difference. We have to keep the CCP away from these highest end semiconductor chips. They will use those chips against us militarily, whether it's in hypersonic missiles or in other weapon systems, and they will use it to perfect their surveillance state, their techno-authoritarian surveillance state against Uyghurs, Tibetans, and others.